How's that will holding up?
No.
Have you ever created a trust? How's your DNR? Do you have a living will? All of those questions are the kind that come up in the office of someone who handles legal matters for the elderly or people who are planning for later years of life. So to address all those topics, or maybe just a couple of the most pertinent ones we can get to.
Because I'm sure they're lengthy.
Elder law attorney Michael Cohen, and he specializes in the legal needs of the elderly and the disabled. Michael, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you all for
Wide
inviting me.
spectrum of problems,
There's
right?
a long list of issues.
Yes,
right?
of course.
And we talked a little bit before the show. If you were to tell us what is the number one or the main topic that you find that you need to address with people who come into your office, what would it be?
Well, the cost of being disabled. Because the older we are and people are living longer, the more likelihood of disability.
Sure.
And I always think about how long people are living now compared to the way they used to live. And, you know, today's 90 is yesterday's 70.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I talk often about my wife's grandmother who, unfortunately, she died prematurely at 107 and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, so people live longer, and the longer you live, the more likely something bad's going to happen. And the cost of care is so great that people say, how am I going to afford it?
Well, how do you afford it?
Well, there's lots of different ways. Of course, a lot of times we have to try to coordinate between public and private funds. That may mean, you know, a lot of people think, oh, Medicare is going to take care of me, but unfortunately, very limited coverage at best. And so a lot of times we have to talk about things like Medicaid or veterans benefits, depending on the situation. There's lots of different Medicaid programs, 40 or 50 Medicaid programs alone, and they all have their own rules.
So don't you have to, with Medicaid, don't you have to give up everything?
That's
sell
the
your car,
misconception.
sell your house,
Really?
No, that's the
empty your bank
misconception.
accounts.
Yeah.
That's
you know,
what people my age believe.
Well, originally that's the way it was, and a lot of times if you're single, a lot of times that's the case, but actually there are certain things that do not count. So the things that you just mentioned happen to be some items that do not count for Medicaid.
Okay.
So a house, for example, if you're single, in Texas, up to $536,000 equity doesn't count as a resource, and one car doesn't count, and there's some other things. So it's kind of like, somewhat respects like bankruptcy law, certain things are protected. And a lot of times when there's spouses, you can protect a lot more assets. Now, there's rationale for all laws. It's just kind of like, why do we have protect things in bankruptcy? Why do we encourage things on tax laws? On tax laws, we say, oh, we want you to save for retirement so you could have an IRA or 401k. Well, for Medicaid, there's laws to prevent spousal impoverishment. People used to get divorced to get eligible for things like public benefits like Medicaid, and so the laws are designed to say, look, we don't think as a society that you should get divorced just to get public benefits. So you can protect more resources a lot of times.
Long-term care insurance, LTC, is it almost always a good idea to at least explore long-term care?
Well, it depends on your situation and what your age is and what your assets are and what your income is. And it certainly is something that somebody should consider, but there are those who have very limited resources who can't afford it, or they may have underwriting issues. In other words, they might not pass health tests that they may have, or they may be very wealthy and they may not care as much about things because they may have enough funds to pay for care. So a lot of times it depends upon what that income is or your resources are. You may look and see about your support of family, and other issues should be considered as well.
It's so complicated. How do people sort this out? Does everybody need a lawyer then?
Oh, I don't know that everybody necessarily needs a lawyer. Yes, the answer should be yes.
Michael, yes is the answer.
But, you know, really, it depends. I think that a lot of times people should be educated at the very least and try to know what their options are.
Have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan. It's just like anything, because we don't know if we're ever gonna just die, or if we're gonna become disabled. We don't know what our destiny is. Destiny and certainty, they're different issues.
Well, you know what? Let's leave it here, because these are important issues, and there are many more. So we'll have to ask you back to discuss some of these other issues.
What a pleasure it would be.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Coming up next on the Texas Daily, how the FDA is getting involved in your smartphone, and yours, and yours, and yours. So stick around. We're going to talk to that. You're watching KTXD.
Get off my phone.
Yeah. No, government agency.